Welcome to Playing Above the Line, where we interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and community activists to get their thoughts and perspectives on leadership. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Aviso Group, a business consulting and accounting firm focused on preparing clients for the future through innovation and positive growth. Welcome to another episode of Playing Above the Line. I'm Alan, your host, and we are once again coming to you from our studio on the campus of Coastal Alabama Community College in Fairhope. Always real thankful to those guys for opening this space up to us, and so we are taking full advantage of it, and it's been great the last few weeks. Our guest today is Kristen Barnhill, and she is a graphic design and animation instructor at Coastal Alabama. And so, Kristen, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.
Kristen, thanks for coming, and looking forward to talking to you about leadership and your journey and what you're doing now. So, but let me ask you a question. So, first of all, the first time that I came up here to where we are on the third floor of the Borum building here on Coastal's campus in Fairhope, I was amazed at the technology that's here. I mean, our studio, of course, but then there's a big room with a green screen, and you've got virtual reality setups and just all sorts of neat stuff. And so I'm very impressed that this exists, number one. And number two, I'm kind of ashamed I didn't know about it. But so how did you end up in your position here? I mean, have you always been interested in graphic design and animation, that kind of thing, or is this something that's evolved over the years?
I was actually hired as a animation and visual effects instructor in the fall of 2014.
Okay.
The program had started the year before, and it started as a pilot programs, and the instructors they had were from Montreal, Canada, from the National Art and Design Center. And the actual name and the website is all in French, and I don't know French. So we got a lot of training from the instructors up there when they came down, but they would come down here for a few weeks at a time, teach the students, and then go back to Canada, to Montreal,
okay, and
teach remotely, like virtually, like a lot of the things are happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I was hired as the first full-time instructor, at the campus that lives here. And I have a degree in associates in commercial art and graphic design from this school, and
okay,
it was Faulkner. And I have a degree in digital art from LSU. And so digital art, that's where I learned about 3D animation and 3D modeling. And then I furthered my experience doing training for character animation online with Animation Mentor.
Okay.
I kind of had gone more in the direction to do animation rather than graphic design. But then I was moved over to also teaching graphic design. I guess it was my second year, maybe the end of my second year teaching here. And
okay,
and I kind of stuck there and have learned to love it again.
Well, I think I was reading in your bio, but the animation program at LSU was relatively new, right? Whenever you went there, is that right?
Yes, it was fairly new. It's the digital art program,
okay,
so
okay,
it was new, and I had actually decided to go back to school. It had been a while since I'd been in school and really practiced graphic design professionally. I felt like, the software, the computer programs, just my creativity had gotten rusty. So I wanted to go back to school, and it was around, I think it was in 2009 or 2010 when I decided this. So I got in touch with the art director at LSU, and he's like, hey, we have this new program. It's a digital art program. I think you would be interested in it. And what do you say about doing that instead of going back into graphic design? I was like, yeah, let's do it, And so it changed my path. And so the guy's name, the director over there, is Rod Parker. So
okay,
he was a big influence for me.
Yeah. Well, that's very cool, and I've got to think that, even that's been 8 years ago. I guess you graduated in 2012 with that degree. So in the past 8 years, I've got to think that technology, though, has really just made a huge difference in what you guys can do here now, I would think.
Yeah, definitely. Technology is actually changing all the time, every year. That's why we have professional training where through Coastal Alabama Community College, we can get professional training and, development where for a few years in a row, I would do a character animation course,
okay,
and just to keep my skills up and, be familiar with programs. But the software, it changes all the time. Like, I feel like I'm running in circles trying to keep up with it sometimes.
I got to think. And that's kind of like accounting software. I guess just technology is progressing at such a rapid pace now that you have to be on top of it. So, well, very interesting stuff. Let's talk about leadership. That's kind of why we're here. So, when I say leader or leadership, or give me your definition of a leader, what do you have?
Well, when I was asked to do this podcast, I'm like, am I a leader? Oh my gosh. And I was like, wow, I've come a long way since like 15 or 20 years ago. My life was completely different and I did not have too much direction. But where I am now, I feel like I'm accomplished and I'm happy. Mm-hmm. And as far as leadership, I would say for me, I'm a really feelings type of person, so I'm like, you've got to have empathy. You've got to be able to identify with other people. And leadership it's about commitment and having passion and being focused and definitely organization. And this is leadership as a teacher. You've got to be able to work well with other people. I have to be a people person. So
yeah, well, it sounds like you may subscribe to one of my theories in that I think that the relationship part is very important. And it sounds like kind of that's what you're saying. I mean, you mentioned empathy and understanding and that kind of thing, which I think are all components of that relationship at the core. But what about the relationship is so integral, do you think, to, and I'm talking more about your relationship with your students as opposed to, and I'm not, well, and I guess it could be your fellow faculty members as well, but I'm kind of coming at it from a teacher-student, relationship at this point. What makes that so important, do you think?
I don't know. So what I teach is a lot of art classes. So I teach 3D animation and 3D modeling and then some graphic design classes. So everything is about art. So when you think of art, like art has feeling, and that's the way it's kind of produced. It's from a feeling. And so therefore, a lot of my students have lots of feelings. There's always sort of a certain personality type that my students seem to have. Not all of them, but, it's about feelings. And so that's how art is produced. And so sometimes, you just kind of have to reach them on a certain level and to kind of get them in the groove for creative thinking, to kind of express themselves through their artwork. Because sometimes you get stuck. It's kind of like writer's block, but it's artist's block. Mm-hmm. So, I'm there to drive them, not only to just teach them in a class and pass them or fail them, and so they get their degree and go on into the world, but I'm there to help build them and, then release them into the wild to hopefully be a professional designer, artist, animator, whatever it is. And that's my goal. So I try to think of their future and not just what they're doing in my classroom, So.
Yeah. That's interesting because I'm an accountant / CPA by training and trade. And so as you were talking, I was sitting here thinking, that's pretty spot on, because I'm thinking of my contemporaries and people maybe that I graduated with from college and that kind of thing. And we were all pretty buttoned up, close to the vest, don't really wear our sleeves on our feelings type, people. And I think it's a generalization, but I think that that's true a lot of times of folks who major in accounting. And then I think of my, artist buddies and friends. They are free spirits. You never really have to wonder what they're thinking or what they're feeling because it's all out there. And so that is interesting that can translate into the relationship between the student and teacher. That's very cool. Well, let's circle back to something else that you said, and I don't know that anybody has really used this word before in talking about what they think a good leader is or the qualities, but you mentioned organization, and I think that's spot on. I mean, I think you absolutely have to be organized, or it helps if you're organized in your leadership and that kind of thing. So I don't think I'm a really organized person, and I think that kind of sometimes bleeds over into my time management style and that kind of thing. So I'm always looking for tools to help. But so what are some organization tips you can give me to be able to improve? Because I need that big time. Carrie's over here laughing because she knows it's true. So what do you have anything?
Okay. Well, I have a 3-year-old. I've got to have some type of organization in my life to function, and have sanity. As far as teaching and my professional role is, I like to be organized with my folders on my computer. So a lot of things I like to organize are my workspace. I've got to have a clean desk. If it's messy, I'm so distracted. Mm-hmm. Like, I have to work in my office. I can't work from home. I just get nothing done, you know. And so, first of all, is my workspace. Got to be clean. Now, I can't say this of my computer right now being organized, but like I work better when my folders are clean. You know, I'll have maybe like documents or forms folder for like students filling out the forms, class folders for certain assignments. And I try to actually preach what I teach what I preach, and get students to be organized as well. So I try to start them off that way. When they first start my class, I'm like, all right, so I want you to have this folder. You need to have a folder for this class so you know where your stuff is. Even if you're not a type A personality or somebody that likes to be organized, well, I mean, actually for any type of computer artist or worker, you've got to be organized, or nobody's going to want to work with somebody that can't find their files. And a lot of that kind of comes down to computer files.
Yeah,
I'm such a dork.
Well, if you can figure out a way to organize my email, that's my downfall. I mean, it's out of control. So I would come take a class just so you could teach me how to do that. So, all right, let's talk about. So you mentioned Rod Parker earlier. Anybody else that has been a mentor or has been a big influence on you as far as your where you are now, your leadership style, your professional career?
Yes. My last semester at LSU in the digital art program, I was not interested in taking another art elective class. And so I'm like, well, what if I take this class again? I really liked that one, and I want to take it again. You know, I passed it, but I want to take it again. And they're like, well, how about you be the teacher's assistant? Because they had a part-time, I guess, adjunct type faculty member that came along. And so they were like, maybe he needs a little help or something. So I'm like, oh my God, I would love to do that. So that was my first opportunity at teaching. Evan Smith was his name. And so he worked with me to build my art portfolio for when I graduated, and I helped him with the class and making sure students knew what they were doing and everything. And so I loved it. He actually had suggested, you know, if I wanted to further my skills in character animation, he's the one that mentioned Animation Mentor and me going there.
Okay.
And there's other people along the way that kind of I'd like to give a shout out to. Mike Gassaway. He was really inspirational mentor at Animation Mentor, and the best, like, coolest character animation teacher that I had. A lot of them were great, but I had him twice, and so he's just really funny, and he kind of kept me in the game and helped me think creatively, and so he was great. So Tiz Day, she's my supervisor, and actually also my supervisor before that, my AKA boss, Ann Strickland. Both of them have guided me through learning how to teach better and also be a better person. Tiz has been my supervisor for several years now and had started out just a few years. And then I remember thinking, no, it was like she was like Mama Bear in our division. And I'm like, what am I going to do without you? Because she's the one that's like, you can do this. You're the person that knows how to do this, so teach it. Because, you know, naturally I was a little bit scared about being a teacher and having a classroom. I was new to it. But they have helped me grow professionally in all kinds of ways. So I just wanted to say thank you to them.
Well, that's very good. Thank you for that. It's amazing what a difference a good mentor influence can have in your life. So I think that's good stuff. Let me ask you about, I don't know if you mentioned the word motivation, but I do want to ask you about motivating your students, because I do think that might be maybe a challenge sometimes, especially this day and time when there's so many things that can take our students, young people's, attention. So what do you do or how do you motivate students who are motivated by different things? I mean, how do you identify that? Is there, can you speak to the challenges maybe of motivating a whole room full of students who have different personalities?
Oh, yeah. It kind of comes along with attention. Mm-hmm. And now I have ADD, so sometimes I have to really focus to listen, but a lot of artists have ADHD, whether they're actually diagnosed or medicated or not. So we're able to doodle and listen at the same time really well, and sort of multitask sometimes, which, by the way, doodling's great. It's good for actually mental health benefits.
Okay.
I did find an article on it last night by chance because I just got an iPad Pro recently with the Apple Pencil 2. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a number 2 pencil, but it's a digital pencil. Mm-hmm. It's a very expensive pencil. No. And my boyfriend just laughs at me. He's like, "You're just doodling." I'm like, "This is art. This is serious." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm doodling." But I was like, it helps. It helps with like my anxiety. It helps with me thinking. And I don't know if I could have clarity through creative expression. And so I don't know. I think my phone heard me. You know, they spy on you. And it just popped up on my phone. I don't know where it came from. It just showed up when I was surfing the web. And I found that article. I'm like, yeah, see, I told you. Mm-hmm. It helps mentally with your thinking process. So it definitely really is a thing.
Yeah. Well, I can guarantee there are probably people listening to this podcast right now who have kids who've had a parent-teacher conference where the teacher says, Johnny is always doodling. He will not pay attention. He's always drawing. Well, maybe because Johnny needs to concentrate or to exactly what you said, you know, to be able to release some anxiety or whatever that is a thing. So that's very cool.
And Johnny may be your next big storyboard artist for a big motion picture animation or something, you know. You never know. Yeah. I mean, that little doodler kid, it's kind of like Captain Underpants. Right. Those little kids, they were drawing little comic books, and they really did make a big story.
Yeah. Well, I don't know for sure, but I would almost bet money on the fact that Steve Jobs or, you know, Bill Gates or something, they were probably doodlers. I'm thinking, you know. Yeah. I mean, if I had to bet money, I would say they probably were. But anyway, very off topic, but that was interesting. So thanks for that.
And about motivating students, I actually try to keep their attention and motivate them at the same time. So motivation by repeating things several times so they know what's going on in the classroom and motivating them creatively. So a lot of the times when students first start a class with me, say, for example, a graphic design class, and we're doing a project in Photoshop or something, and they see how the clone stamp can work and how you could totally just change a photo, and it's really fun. And students are just blown away, you know, like, that is so cool. And so I try to keep their motivation and see what drives them. And sometimes you can see those types of students that are losing that inspiration that put them in your classroom. Like, how did they get there, you know? So I just try to find that thing that they like, and I'll try to remind them. Or, you know, I have students sometimes come to my office. I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if I can do it, and just everything's hard. And, you know, I just try to remember what was it that sparked their interest and tell them a little bit about me and, you know, my trip through life and my different paths I took and how I found to get the path I am now.
Yeah. Well, I know I sound like a broken record, people, but I mean, it's a relationship. That's what it is, the relationship. If you didn't have the relationship with that student, they would never come in and tell you they're struggling. You would never tell them your story. You would never, you know, I mean, you'd never motivate them to be able to find their passion and pursue their dreams or whatever form it takes. And so if you don't hear anything else, hear that. Relationships. All right.
Yep.
Okay, let's get to something a little bit less leadership, but more kind of get to know Kristen side of things. So since your background is in animation and graphic design, do you kind of lean toward animated movies? I mean, do they hold your interest more since that's your chosen profession, or does it not really?
Yes. Since I started teaching back in 2014, I try to think of different types of examples to sort of inspire students or things to use in my lectures. This movie, I don't know, Lord of the Rings, and there's this special effects used here, or I try to, you know, capture them with whatever movie they think is awesome, what movie is cool at the time or something. And I just use Lord of the Rings, for instance. You know, there's lots of them. And so they're like, oh, yeah, that's how they did that? And then I'm like, okay, well, let's show you how that's done. You can do it, too. And that's what we're going to learn today, or something like that. And I can also see things when people are like, oh, that looks so CG. I can see it now, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so with that being said, give me in your opinion, this is one person's opinion, but it's yours. What's one of the, as far as animation goes, the best movie that if one wants to see, all right, this is what animation should look like, where do they go? What do they watch?
Well, and it's not only about the animation, it's about the story. My favorite is Pixar's Up.
Okay.
It's kind of reaches all audiences. That's my favorite. Now, that's how animation should look, and that's how it should play out as far as a story.
Yeah, agreed. Because I mean, you can have the best animation in the world, but if the story's not good, then
Exactly.
I mean, who really cares, right?
Yeah, like some of the little YouTube kids videos my little boy watches. I'm like, Alex, what are you watching? Like it's like the animation is okay, it's 3D animation, but the story is like, did they start singing this just out of thin air, like kind of like you're singing in the shower and you're just like da 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 da. But he loves it, so okay.
Well, I mean, look, anything to keep a 3-year-old
That's why they're
occupied
just
for
on YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
So, if I opened up Spotify or iTunes, or if I went to the presets on your radio, what's on heavy rotation on your music?
I like classic rock.
Okay.
But right now, I just have it 99.9, just the Christmas station. I'm getting a little tired of it, so I've been making a playlist on Amazon Music. Let's see, some of my things involve, Fiona Apple, Jimi Hendrix, lots of the classic stuff. I like some newer things, like Chris Stapleton, Tennessee Whiskey.
Yep.
I love that one. So that put my little boy to sleep when he was an infant, like just play it over and over. It was like magic. I love the song too, Alex.
Well, he's going to have a wonderful taste in music if that's what put him to sleep, because that's one of my favorites. I love that song and that artist, so that's good. A couple more questions. So, what do you do for fun when you're not teaching and taking care of Alex?
A lot of what I like to do is when I'll relax first, get home and get comfortable, watch some Netflix. Grey's Anatomy, that's my thing lately. I had never watched it until about 6 months ago during the summer. I started watching it, and because my sister and my friends were talking about it all the time, and I didn't know what they were talking about. They were referencing it to life, and I'm like, what? So I'm like, I guess I should watch it. So I got hooked on it. And so there's so many seasons. It's still running. I think it's on 17 or something. So I started watching it, and I'm almost up to the present moment. So that's my thing. And now I don't just sit at home and watch that all the time. But a lot of the time I do.
Understood.
I like to play on my iPad Pro that I got and doodle. And I like to go for bike rides, though it hurts my legs. And my boyfriend laughs because I complain like a big baby because my legs hurt. We go for walks, too, and kayaking. My boyfriend's pretty cool. He's adventurous, so
okay.
I'm like, yay.
Very good. All right, one last question. This is going to be one that Carrie likes. I haven't asked in a while, but so when you leave this afternoon and head out and head home, and you're in your car, if a little spaceship landed and blocked your path so you couldn't go any further, and a little alien comes down and comes up to the car and taps on the window and says, "Kristen, take me to your leader," where do you take the little alien?
Oh my gosh. That is so funny.
It used to be in heavy rotation back in the early days of the podcast. We've kind of come off of a little bit.
Yes, I love that. Okay, leader, that's going to be my dad. I'll be like, okay, let me call him. My dad, my mom and dad, they're my leaders.
Yeah.
They guide me through life. I don't know what I'd do without them. And my sisters.
Yeah.
Just family in general, really.
Yeah, that's great. Nothing wrong with that. Kristen, thank you so much. This has been a fun interview. I appreciate you taking time to join us. And if folks want to check out Coastal and what they're doing in the animation department, they can go to the website. We'll have all that information linked in the show notes. So, Kristen, once again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. It definitely helps us in the ratings, and it also makes it easier for other folks to find the podcast. And as always, a big thank you to producer and editor Carrie Wolf. Playing Above the Line is sponsored by Avizo Group. If you want to know more about who we are and what we do, you can visit our website at avizogroup.com. That's AVIZO group.com. You can also check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Thanks for listening.